Hey, everybody. Looks like we are live. All right. So, Art, Night, Dade, and Michael. How are everybody tonight? Looks like I got a few of you out there lurking, so I'll say hello to you as well. I got some weird lag time on my monitor already tonight. Don't know what we're going to make of that. I'm used to a lag time between what I do and then what I see on my tablet. But my laptop should be pretty much real time, and I got about a 1 second delay on it. It's kind of messing with my head. I'm not used to having a lag time on my monitor. All right, we're going to get right into it tonight. So far, all the fish are doing well. I actually do have some update information on my discus that I moved. I have noticed over the last couple of days the bullied discus has been out and about. We'll talk about it more once we actually get to looking at the tank. But the bullied discus, I've been seeing, hey, Mike, out and about a lot more, swimming around amongst the other ones. And, of course, now he's back in his little hiding spot now that I'm looking at him. But I saw him yesterday out and about, and I saw him this morning out and about. But when I came in to start getting ready for the live stream, he was again hiding in his little spot. But then when I came back in a little while later, he was not in his spot again. So he's definitely coming out and about more now that I got that other one separated from the tank. So I don't know if that was the male or the female, but I'm pretty sure it was one half of that mated pair. And even though I feel really guilty about breaking that mated pair up, I wanted to, before I just reacted and moved it back and whatever, one of the key principles of fish keeping is patience. Just wait and watch and observe. And so I know to do that. And so I waited and I wanted to give it a little while and see what actually happened once I moved that one. And it seems like it might be making a difference if, that one being out and about a little bit is anything to go by. So for now, I'm not going to change anything back, but I'm still going to consider getting the bullied one, just getting it out of there and moving it into a different tank or something. That's still on the table, but I don't know if I'm going to do that for sure or not. I started my life nearly 54 years ago, but I did start the live stream at 8. So just a few minutes ago, yes. And thank you, Dade. While we're looking at the pond, I do want to mention that on Wednesday's members only live stream, we did a little bit of work in here. I got in and did the trimmed up some of the larger leaves that were hanging out over the pond. I cut the flowers on there that had passed their prime. They were fading. I cut a few other sort of browning leaves that were passing their prime. And we also got in and cleaned out the intake for the pond, but it seems like it's getting a little clogged up again. So I'm going to get my arm back in there and pull some more stuff out. And we'll see if we can't get it flowing up to full crank again. Oh, yeah, it's definitely got some plants and stuff on it. That ought to do it. I don't think we increased it that much, but when I got in there on Wednesday, it was really clogged up. And it made a big difference on Wednesday. I don't think tonight was even really that noticeable. It's flowing a little more, but not much. Had a few little things stuck to the front of it. All right, let's move on. Don't really have anything planned for tonight. We did some maintenance on Wednesday that I needed to get done. I am still thinking about doing a water change on both my 125s actually, but my other 125, the one with the silver dollars in it, the glass needs to be wiped down. It's just been a while since I've been in there. Maybe we'll check the nitrate in that tank tonight and see what is going on with that. I don't think it's been that long since I've done a water change in there, but it's been a while. And I need to get the glass wiped down. So if I'm going to get in there and do some work, I may as well get in there and just, you know, drain some water out of it. The fancy goldfish are doing okay. Their tank is actually still looking pretty good. The glass on this tank, it's algae growing on it really quickly because I've got that floodlight over top of it, which, you know, it's just a lot of light. And I don't have this floodlight on a dimmer. So that is full crank, all, you know, every bit of juice is going through that floodlight right down into that tank. My 3 tanks that have the array of lights over them, all 3 of those do have dimmer switches on them, and they're only running about 1/3 of their full output. So even though, you know, I've got 6 of them over my 125s, it's the light output equivalent of about 3 of them. So this is a 40, and it's just got 1 light over it, and it's at full crank. Steve. And I assumed you realized it when you looked at the pictures, Steve, but those 2 pictures I sent you were of 2 different plants. The one where you can see the whole entire top of it, that is the Tropicana cookies, and it's just growing really, it's just going to be a massive plant when it's finally finished. And then the other one was the Super Silver Haze that's just got those really big, fat, dense nuggets all over it. So when I get around to it, I'll show you guys the pictures I took earlier. And I'll give you a look at what my weed's doing. The Super Silver Haze, is going to be ready to harvest in about another week or so. It's really putting on weight. The hairs are starting to brown up. The calyxes are starting to multiply on top of each other. So I haven't actually put my magnifying glass on it yet. The way you really tell when it's ready for harvest is by looking at the trichomes through a magnifying glass. And when they're the right appearance, I'll spare you the details, but when they're the right appearance, that's what you go by. If you don't have a magnifying glass, you can just kind of go by the rule of thumb of looking at all the hairs, you know, and when the hairs are mostly starting to turn brown, you're more or less there. You know, it's not going to matter that much if you're a few days this way or a few days that way of peak ripeness. But the only way you can really tell is by looking at those trichomes and knowing when it's ready. And I have not done that yet because I know it's not ready yet. So I've got, you know, a solid week or so before I have to really start looking closely at it. But I am pretty much out of weed. All I'm smoking, hey gamer, all I'm smoking now is the that outside shit that I had, and I dried out and it wasn't cured. So I do have a joint in here tonight, which means I'm going to cough and choke my full head off when I try to smoke it. The upshot is, and this is not really an upshot, some of you may remember that not too long ago, I got some marijuana e-liquid, and I liked it so much I bought some more. And then after buying it, it didn't show up, and I thought that the company had gone out of business, and, you know, I was just shit out of luck. Well, eventually the box did show up, and I thought, awesome, you know, that's great. And I just assumed that was the last I was ever going to see of it because I thought the company had gone out of business. But I'd forgotten that that box I ordered was actually a subscription box. So I haven't even gotten into the box from the last delivery, and I had another package show up in the mail today. Didn't know what it was, but obviously when I opened it up, it was my next delivery of my e-liquid. So I now have 6 bottles, well, 6 unused bottles, plus the one I'm working on of the THC e-liquid. So I will be puffing on my mod tonight, but I won't be actually smoking a lot of weed, but I definitely have some THC to be puffing on. I got to get caught up. Actually, I need to cancel that subscription. So $80 a month is not something I want to spend on weed. The temperature of the koi is probably around 70 degrees, 72 degrees. That's what the tank usually sits at down here at room temperature. Yeah, 72.5 right now. But I also have other fish in there. I've got tropical fish in with the koi. So it's not just koi fish in there. I got some barbs and some live bears and whatnot. But 72 is fine. As long as the temperature stays in the 70s, I'm good. And in the winter, it might get a little cooler in here, but I run space heaters and stuff down here often enough. And the tank is large enough that if the water, gets a little bit warmed up during the day, even over the course of an entire night, it's not going to cool down that much. And so I can usually keep the pond above 70 degrees, which is my goal. If it started getting really chilly, I guess I could always throw a heater in there. But again, it's not for the goldfish. It's because I have other live bears in there. I've got some barbs in there, a couple different varieties of barbs. And so I definitely want to keep it at least somewhat, warmer temperatures for the tropical fish. I think live bears are probably okay with dealing with cooler temperatures. I'm not sure about the barbs, though. Getting snow in Chicago. Winter is here. I just got a notification saying that we are going to get some rain overnight. Yeah, we had our first real freeze last night, or at least that's what my wife says. I didn't notice anything frozen this morning when I got up. I did. I did have to go outside last night. God damn it! It was 12:05. I was just over the peak of my mushroom trip. And I was still tripping pretty good, but I was definitely over the peak, and I was coming, down the backside of it a little bit. And I decided I was done for the night. I was going to go upstairs, get in my nest, and, I could start, winding down and watching some, Doctor Who or whatever as I drifted off to sleep. And as I'm turning lights and stuff out, I remembered I didn't take the fucking recycling down last night, and it really had to go down last night. Last week was the week that I was like, it can go another week. Last night the can was full. Like we would have been piling stuff up on the counter if we didn't get it out last night. So at a little after midnight, I had to get dressed and put on the fucking coat, put my hat on. However, again, I was still tripping a little bit when I did it, and so it was a really, really clear night. It was like one of those really crisp winter nights. It was cold, but it wasn't that cold. I could see my breath and everything. But the moon was almost full. It's just past full. The sky was absolutely crystal clear. I could see all the stars. I actually, when I got to the bottom of the driveway with the recycling can, I just kind of hung out for a little while and just sort of took it all in. And, the trees are really starting to lose their leaves now. And so I could see all the bare trees, against the pale sky because of the full moon and everything. It was pretty cool, but it was still pretty cold. And I was not planning on doing that and exposing myself to all that cold and carrying shit down. I'm trying to be quiet because my wife was asleep, and I got to wheel the can right past the bedroom. So yeah, I had an unexpected adventure when I thought I was going to be going upstairs and hunkering down in my nest. I was actually going outside for the recycling. Hey, JP, how are you? All right, I did have some thoughts on my mind this evening, fish keeping related, so maybe I'll save that for when we sit down after we get everybody fed. I'm not going to spend a lot of time getting everybody fed tonight. We're just going to kind of make our way around the room. All right, let's move on to the next tank. For anybody that doesn't know yet, I have named my pearl cichlid right there. His name is Mr. Fabulous. And I probably needn't explain why. Pretty self-explanatory. Yeah, this lag time on my monitor is really messing with my head. I learned something new about both geography and my own family by watching an old Doctor Who episode tonight. I was watching Spearhead from Space before the live stream started, and Spearhead from Space is the third Doctor's debut episode. It's where we first meet John Pertwee. And in it, one of the characters, Brigadier General Lethbridge Stewart, was talking about a report from some space agency he got, and he said he got it from the space agency in Baltimore. I was like, oh no shit, I can't believe I like all the times I've seen Spearhead from space, I've never noticed that they shouted out Baltimore in that. And then I thought, wait a minute, there's so many American names around here that are actually English names, you know, Hampstead, for example, Manchester, my next town over. And so I looked up Baltimore, and sure enough, there's a Baltimore in the UK, God damn it. So my Baltimore is not the original Baltimore. And I never knew that. I grew up in Baltimore, and I had no idea that there was a Baltimore in Ireland. I don't know. Maybe I knew that at some point in my life, but I don't remember ever knowing that. But when I looked it up, the AI said that it was named after the Lord Calvert something or other, the Barrington of Baltimore. And Calvert is one of my family names. It's my mother's maiden name was Calvert, and she was a direct descendant from the Calverts of Calvert County and, you know, Lord Calvert of Baltimore. But I had no idea that the Baltimore came from another place and all that kind of stuff. And again, it's even in my own family history, and I don't know that. But that also brings into question if the Baltimore is from Ireland. I've been told my whole life that it was, you know, they were English. And I guess technically if it's part of the UK or whatever, but if you come from Ireland, I consider that Irish, not English. And so do I have Irish in me that I didn't know about? I don't know. If I wasn't, you know, unwilling to just give my DNA to some fucking company that's going to go do God knows what with it, I would love to take one of those 23andMe type tests and find out what my genealogy actually says. Hey, TK. Yes, that is duckweed. In fact, we can actually get a little bit of that out of there tonight. It's starting to, well, I'm not going to worry about it tonight. I don't really worry too much about the duckweed until it's mostly covering the tank. When you can't really see the light shining through anymore, that's when I usually get rid of it. Yeah, I know the Maryland flag is modeled after the Calvert family crest. And so again, I've known that all my life that I'm somehow distant and related to those people. And again, remember, hey, King, this was my mother's maiden name. So my grandmother on my mother's side was born a Calvert. But then when she married my grandfather, you know, my mother's maiden name was my grandfather's name. So I don't have any direct lineage to the Calvert family other than through my mother. But I've heard about that my whole life. That angelfish in that tank is not particularly large. I'd say he's about medium average size for angelfish. I do occasionally get some like the one in my 29 that are pretty small. And then I've had some really big ones over the years. But that one's about medium size. I wouldn't even put it into the larger category. The body without the fins is probably not even the diameter. Like if I could put it in the palm of my hand, you'd probably still see plenty of hand around the fish's body. So it's not even as big as the palm of my hand. Yeah, even Calvert whiskey is actually part of the family. When I was a kid, and I don't know if there's any truth to this or not. I don't know why my family would have made this up and lied to me about it. But at one point, when I was really young, my grandmother used to get a fifth of Calvert whiskey from the whiskey company every year. They sent it to her as a birthday gift because she was a Calvert. I don't know when that stopped. I don't know why it stopped. And again, I genuinely don't even know if that's actually true. It may have just been something my dad made up one day. Who knows? But I heard that, you know, growing up a lot. And I heard it from my father and my mother. And, you know, that was just a thing that, you know, because I actually was about a mile, maybe about 2.5 miles from the Calvert Whiskey Distillery, which was in Baltimore. And so every time we used to drive by Calvert Whiskey, I would hear once again about how, oh, yeah, they used to give your grandmother, you know, yeah, I know, Dad. You've told me that every fucking time we drive past here, which is all the time. It's right down the street. If the wind was blowing right, you could smell the distillery. And if you've ever smelled a whiskey distillery, it is not a good smell. The smell of that mash fermenting is, oh, God. But they closed that down when I was a kid. I don't know where they moved it or whatever, but Calvert Whiskey shut down a long time ago. Yes, that is the discus that was being bullied. I mean, no, this is not the discus that's being bullied. This is the discus I caught by accident when I was trying to catch the discus that was being bullied. This is the discus that was and I don't know why, but they're just chilling out down there at the other end of the tank. I know it's kind of hard to see because they're fluffer thin. But if you look very closely, you will see down here at the very end of the tank, that discus is just kind of hanging out. I'm not really sure why. I'm guessing the food will swirl around to the point where it gets some, but it doesn't seem to have learned like when feeding time is and where the food comes in. It's only been in the tank a few days, so it's still adjusting to its sudden, change of environment. And it went from being in a large school and being a mated pair to just being slapped in a tank full of tetras. So I do feel a little bad for it. I don't know. Again, I might try to catch that one out and put it back in and then get the bullied one out and go with my original plan. Ideally, I wanted to take the bullied one out and put it in there and leave the mated couple alone, because someday I'd like those eggs to actually do something. They haven't spawned in a while, but they used to spawn fairly frequently. I've had 6 or 8 spawns in the last couple of years from those two. And the closest I've ever gotten was having the eggs survive like 4 days before they were finally all gone. But you never know. One day I might come down and find a couple little baby discus swimming around. I'm assuming they hang out around the parents or something. I have no idea, really. The red-tailed shark's in there somewhere. It comes and goes when it feels like it. It's not exactly an outgoing fish, but it is in there. And I think tonight, being that it's Friday night, I'm going to eat my last 6 squares of my mushroom chocolate bar. I have exactly 1 mushroom left, and it looks as though I may get 1 or 2 more little scraggly mushrooms that come off of my mycelium block in the other room. But it pretty much looks like it's run its course and is done. I'm not really expecting to get anything. Again, I might get a scraggly mushroom or 2 that comes off of it, but that's going to be about it. So I just have to wait. I did check again today on my new mycelium block, and it's only been a week. But after a week, I still don't see any mycelium growth near the edge. Now, keep in mind, when you inject the spores into the medium, I stuck it in there an inch or so and then injected it into the middle. And so it might be in there growing. It just hasn't gotten to the edge where I can actually see it against the clear plastic. But as of now, it shows no signs whatsoever. If you couldn't see the little puncture hole in it, you would just assume it's a brand new mushroom bag that's never been touched. So hopefully in another week or so, I'll start to see some progress on that. This chocolate is so good. Team Detritus. I'm assuming that's a fish tank reference. But Terry Pratchett, in his Discworld series, has a character named Detritus. And every time I see that word, I always think of the character, not the actual stuff in the fish tank. I have no idea how many diamond tetras I have in there. It's about 11, maybe 10. I originally put in, I want to say 7. It might have been 5. I always do odd numbers when I buy schools. So it was either 5 or 7 originally, and that was years and years ago. And I've had several die off over the years, but I've also had several born over the years. And so both those and the Buenos Aires are just sort of self-sustaining schools. I haven't had to add anything to this tank in forever because they just keep making babies in there. And a few survive, which is good. I don't want 50 of them in there. So if 3 or 4 babies survive, that's fine, because as the older ones start to age out and die off, as the younger ones are growing up, it just keeps replenishing my stock. So I don't know the exact numbers of any of those fish in there, but I think it's probably 10 or 11 of the diamonds and probably a similar number of the Buenos Aires now. All right, that was 6 squares of chocolate. So that should do me pretty right in about another hour. All right, we're gonna the plants in the tank you were just looking at were crypt with some Java moss. I do have a little tiny bit of Java fern in there, but it's mostly crypt is what you were seeing. All that big grassy looking stuff is the crypt. I think it's a Wendetti or however you pronounce that. I just think odd numbers look more aesthetically appealing. There's no real reason other than that. It's not like the fish care or anything like that. But when I see 6 fish swimming around, my brain just puts that into 3 pairs of fish. Just the even numbers, they just go into groups wrong in my brain. If I've got an odd number, it looks like 5 fish, or it looks like 7 fish. It doesn't look like 2, 2, and 2. Again, I don't know why, but that's just how I see it. And I've always bought odd numbers of fish when I buy schools for that reason. Again, I'll either buy 5, 7, 9, or whatever. But as far as the fish are concerned, there's no real reason to do it. It's just purely an aesthetics thing for me. So if you want to buy 6 at a time, knock yourself out. Yes, if you actually look right in the back, well, he's gone now, but right in the back of this cave was the skunk loach a minute ago, and he headed that way, so you might see him. No, there he is right there. That little loach that just made an appearance and then disappeared is my last remaining skunk loach. I guess I ought to finish up with this coffee, too. It's not getting any earlier, Yeah, I'll listen to whatever suggestions you got. It makes a sort of sense. It makes sense to me. Again, it's just an aesthetic thing. I just think it looks nicer, and since they're my aquariums, I'm obviously going to set them up the way I think they look nicer. So in that regard, it does make sense. As to why I view them that way, your guess is as good as mine on that one. I don't know how my brain works. It just does. I'm guessing Zini must have fallen asleep, so that's a bummer. I did send him a text before we started, but as I've said before, he turns his phone off if he's asleep, so it's not like it's going to wake him up and remind him that the show started. I've always wanted to try the Odessa barbs. I like them a lot. I've had cherry barbs. I've had not good luck with, but I've had tiger barbs. They're a little nippy and aggressive for me. And I have had the rosy barbs, and I've had neon rosy barbs. And I like all of them. I even like the tiger barbs in the sense that they were cool fish. They weren't in the right aquarium. If I had an aquarium that was more geared to having a school of tiger barbs in it, I'd have no hesitation buying them again. I liked them as a fish. I just had them in, my tanks are full of fish all the time. And so it's tough for me to find nippy type fish a suitable home. Just about any tank I put them in, I'm going to run into issues with, aggressively nippy fish. And I know some people say that they're no big deal. My tiger barbs were aggressively nippy fish, and I wound up having to separate them from some other fish. I had tried them with an angelfish just to see what would happen. Exactly what everybody told me was going to happen happened. So I touched the stove, and it was indeed hot. So after about 2 days, I got the angelfish out of there, which probably saved its life. And so once all those tiger barbs died off, I just never got tiger barbs again. But I've never had the Odessa barbs. I do like them a lot, and they're really cool looking fish. Hey, Matt. I would try them, but as I say often, like I don't need a lot of fish. I don't, my fish just don't die on a regular basis. My tanks stay fairly well stocked. It's years between die offs. And for a schooling type fish, I would have to plan. I would have to just wait until all of these tetras were eventually gone, and then I could add a school of Odessa barbs in here or something like that. I can't just go buy them and put them somewhere. I'd have to set up an entirely new tank, which I'm not doing, and I don't have room for or money for. I'm not, in the near future, I'm not planning on buying any damn thing if I can avoid it. So it is, it's a fish that, it was on my list of I'd like to have them someday. But as far as any kind of, within the next couple of years, probably, I don't actually really expect to get any kind of fish in any serious way. The odd tetra here, or, I'm going to get that betta fish when Gilgalad finally dies. I'm going to replace him. But other than that, I don't really foresee me buying any fish. All right, let me put my coffee away so I stop drinking it before it gets any later. Let me see if my phone's charged or not yet. That's 90%. We can call that good enough. So this weed here, that is my Super Silver Haze. And if you zoom in on it, you can really see. Look at that. Is that not amazing looking? So again, when I'm on and I'm growing shit properly, it grows awesome. So that's the Super Silver Haze, and then that one is and the top of that orange pole you can see is 4 feet tall. So that's how tall that plant is. And you can see that whole top section is all just developing bud. And this plant hasn't even gotten into its last couple of weeks where it really starts packing on the weight. So when that thing starts putting on the weight, it's just going to blow up. It's going to be huge. So hopefully here in the next few weeks, I will be good to go for weed for a while. I usually give my betta fish the Vibrobites. Yeah, the Odessa barbs get pretty big too. Do I have a plan to fix my financial situation? Not really. Just hope more money comes in and, try not to spend as much. I am between Amazon and my credit card, just those two bills alone, I'm over $19,000 in debt. That's not the car payment. That's not the mortgage or the bills or anything. That's just my credit card and Amazon. And I'm $19,000 in debt right now. I've been all right. Other than the whole, being in debt up to my fucking eyeballs thing. I'm doing all right. All right, let's move on. And I saw a video today about Live Aquaria. I didn't actually watch it. It was like a half an hour video, but it was about apparently Live Aquaria has now gone out of business. And I always say I can remember the name of the place that I bought the striated bodia that are in this tank. You may see them when they start smelling the food and coming out and about. I got these from, I think it was Dr. Foster's and Smith. It was Dr. Foster and somebody, and Live Aquaria was the name of their company. And they had awesome fish. They showed up looking like somebody's pets. They were plump. They were colorful. And that was almost 12 years ago now or something. It's been a long time. But I did see how they've eventually they've gone out of business. I don't know anything about why or anything else, but apparently they are gone. No, I haven't bought a new live plant in, God, I don't know, 10 years. I get the plant, I got all the plants originally. I tried a bunch of different stuff. A lot of it didn't work. A lot of it died off. Out of the stuff that didn't die off, the stuff that does well and thrives in my tanks, I tend to just move that around and I spread it from tank to tank. And that's pretty much why most of my tanks look like they have all the same plants in them, is because they kind of do. Yeah, I thought it was Foster and Smith. Thank you, Dade. All right, let me take a couple of puffs of nicotine here and then we'll move on to the next tank. All right, let's move on. Never did see the loaches come out. But like I said, I don't feel like spending a lot of time walking around tonight. I'm going to just sit down and hang out for a little while, call it a night. Figure out which light I'm turning on here. There we go. See the discus hiding in the cave down here? Not much going on in this tank either. Just have the two discus and then there's minnows. This is a tank that's kind of, I don't know, it's just waiting for something to be done with it. I got to get motivated enough to do it. Oh, I like the way you can see the flashing lights just below the tank on the stand there. The algae in my tanks is there. I mean, I don't know. You can see for yourself what the algae looks like. I've never worried too much about algae. As long as I don't have green water and as long as the algae is not so bad that it's killing the plants, then I don't worry about it. I don't mind algae in my tanks. Most of my tanks have algae eating type fish in them anyway, and that keeps it from getting too out of control. And there's a lot more fish out there than you might think that eat algae. I know we think of certain fish as algae eaters, but most people sort of misnomer algae eaters. When they say algae eaters, they're usually thinking of stuff like plecos. I think of them as off-flux grazers. They actually scrape the surface clean. An algae eater, guppies are algae eaters, gouramis are algae eaters, goldfish are algae eaters. There's all kinds of fish out there that eat algae. Of course, the Siamese algae eaters eat algae without actually scraping the surface. Flying foxes. There's a bunch of fish out there that are algae eating type fish. So for all I know, the minnows in here might nibble on the algae. I have no idea. And then, of course, I've got snails and all that kind of stuff in most of my tanks too. Shrimp. All right, let us move on because there's nothing really to look at in this tank except a bunch of hair algae and a couple of fish swimming around. I'll give you a quick look at this tank, but we're not going to dwell on this one either. I really need to get in there and start thinning out some of this Java moss, like so. Hey, look at that. I got a power head down there in the bottom that you can see now. All right, I want to make sure I'm not accidentally collecting up any shrimp in here. Doesn't look like it. All right, so all I got in this tank is a couple of guppies and a bunch of shrimp. And as far as at least yesterday, Gilgalad was still alive in there. I did see him. So he's still in there, but he's still just lying on the bottom looking pretty pathetic. So again, we're just going to have a quick look at this tank, and then we'll move on and get right to the discus tank. This is probably my most visually appealing tank, with the possible exception of my other 125. So if we look, if you see the fish in the back that's being chased around, this little one right here, that, see how that other fish just kind of chased him again, and that other fish just kind of went after him. You see him now, he's down at the bottom, down here hiding in the bushes. This is the bullied one. So he is out of his spot, but you can see how much smaller he is. His color is actually starting to lighten up. He used to be really dark, and now he's starting to get a blue color back to him. So I definitely think changing the dynamics of the fish that were in the tank has been beneficial to him, at least. But I'd probably still be better off just putting him in a separate tank altogether and then moving that other one back in here. So we'll see what happens over time. I'm going to give it a little longer and just watch and wait. Yeah, Powerhead is basically the same as a wave maker. Wave makers, they call them that simply because you place them near the surface and it creates some waves and stuff at the surface. If you want to technically think about it, you could call that a wave maker. But if I put it down here at the bottom of the tank, I'd call it a powerhead. So I just call them powerheads. It's just a little pump, little impeller in there, and it just moves water. I do have a large 850 gallon per hour one down here, and then this one is a 400 gallon per hour one up there. Ark, you made it. So I always used to think wave makers back in the day, because sometimes you see them listed as powerheads, sometimes you see them listed as wave makers. I thought wave makers were more akin to the kind of thing you see like at a wading pool or like a wave pool at an amusement park, where, you know, it's like this thing that like pushes and stops and it creates a wave that goes across the tank. That's not what a wave maker is. A wave maker is just a power head you put near the surface, and it causes some ripples and some waves and stuff on the surface, and that makes it a wave maker. So if we look in here, look at all them waves. So that's a wave maker. Again, I got the exact same unit, except it's a larger version of it down there in the bottom, and that would be referred to as a power head simply because it's not at the surface making, quote, waves. Now, there are some that are much more expensive, and you can actually, you know, they'll pulse, they'll come on, they'll go off, they'll come on, they'll go off at certain intervals. There's some that pan back and forth and sort of do like a oscillating fan kind of motion, and they spread the water around. There's some that have double heads on them, and you can point them in different directions. Yeah, but that, regardless of when they come on and off, they're not a wave maker in the sense that I'm thinking of a wave maker. It's just a power head. It just comes on for a few minutes and then shuts off. It comes on and shuts off, and it might create a series of flowing water or whatever, but it's not like I thought of as like an actual wave maker, like you were going to see a wave cresting across the surface. And I knew obviously you weren't going to see a wave cresting across the surface. But I thought it was like a single pulse that made a wave go across the water. And it's not. It's just a power head. Again, they can pulse on and off, but it's still just going to be a pump that just pushes water. I recommend them, saltwater or no. Obviously, if you got a saltwater tank, you kind of need lots and lots of circulation. There's not too many spots of the ocean where you don't get a lot of water movement. But even in my freshwater tanks, just about all of them, even my smaller ones, like you just saw in that 20-gallon tank, I got a little power head in there. I always have backup sort of redundancy systems. And I say all the time that the key function of my filter is to circulate water. It's not to filter necessarily, it's to move water. And so if I ever forget to turn my filter on, that lack of water movement would be devastating to my aquarium. But if I do forget to turn the filter back on, which happens on a fairly regular basis, I've always got the power heads, and in this tank I've got 2 power heads, and then I have 2 air stones in addition to the 2 power heads. Even my 20 right, next to it, I've got the power head down here in the bottom. I've got the filter, and I have an air stone. So if any one of the 3 things fails, I still have 2 other sources of water circulation in the tank. And that redundancy has served me well over the years. As I said, with the ADHD, I get distracted easily. I forget about stuff. I have done many water changes where I've shut the filter down, finished up the water change, and forgot to turn the filter back on. And it might be days. And in one case, it was several months, literally several months before I realized that I had not turned the filter back on. And I didn't even notice. And so that tells you how functional my tanks were. I forgot to turn the filter back on and simply did not notice for several months. It wasn't until I did the next water change that I realized that with my canister filters, they have like the little valve that you flip up and it closes the water so that you can pop the hoses out. I don't actually shut them off. I don't unplug them. I just open that lever and close the valve, and it stops the water from flowing. And when I'm done the water change, I just close the thing back up. It opens the valve and the water starts flowing again. And what happened was I'd done the water change, but I forgot to open the valve back up. And so months later, when I went to do the next water change, I looked at the filter. I went to shut the filter off, and I saw that valve was closed. The little tab was sitting up. And I pulled the filter apart. I looked inside. It was still brand new filter material. I'd done all the work on the filter. I replaced everything inside. I got the filter all reset, and then I never turned it on. And it was the next water change before I realized that I never turned it back on. It was just sitting there humming for 3 months. It just sat there humming, moving water around the inside of the canister without actually making any flow through the tank. And the only way I noticed was when I physically noticed on the filter. It had no impact on my aquarium whatsoever. I can't imagine how having a wave maker would affect the aggression of a fish or not. Bob. Yeah, the way the canister filters, and frankly the way the hang on the back filters work, it's not a true pump like a well pump or something like that if it runs dry it'll burn out, or if you close the valve and suddenly the pump is still trying to pump against the closed valve, it starts building up pressure or something like that. It's just an impeller. It just moves water, and as long as it's able to move that water, it'll move it along. But it's like turning a fan on. If you turn a fan on and the window's closed, the fan still spins and it still moves air, it still blows air up against the window. It just doesn't go out the window and go anywhere. It just kind of moves air around inside the room because the fan's just blowing against the window. It's not like you'd be pumping the room full of air and eventually the windows will blow out from the increased pressure. It just moves the air around. And that's the way these impellers work, is they just move the water. So when you close them, it just spins. It's not burning anything out. It's not hurting anything. It's not wearing out a device. It's just spinning. It's not doing anything. It's not, you're just wasting electricity because it's not, doing anything in your aquarium. But you're not in any danger of like burning your pump up or wearing out the filter or anything like that if you don't get it up and running again. Again, it's just an impeller. It just spins. All right, everybody. I think we can call that good for getting everybody fed for the night. And I am ready to come and sit down. I feel like I'm forgetting something. I don't know what it is. Finally went and sprayed that stupid customer of mine today. Not that she's a stupid customer. I'm just complaining about the whole process of the day and everything. But I went over there. It took me an hour to drive over there. She had a new tree installed. I spray deer repellent, if you don't know. And she had a new tree installed. And I told her, I don't know why I shouldn't have just kept my mouth shut, but I told her, like, let me know when you get it installed. I got to screw this thing down again. Hang on a minute. I told her to let me know when you get it installed, because I'm not going to be back till the end of the month, and I don't want that just sitting there unprotected. You're just getting it planted. I want to make sure I get it taken care of before, I come back. I don't want to show up and have your brand new plant already damaged. And so it went from just let me know when it gets planted and I'll swing by as soon as I get a chance, to this big coordinated effort. And I had to give them an exact time of what day and time I was going to be there so that they could be there and get the chill. Like, they wanted it timed so that, like, as they were shoveling the last pile of dirt on, I was there to spray it or something. And so finally I told them I could be there today, at 2:00 in the afternoon, and et cetera, et cetera. So I finally drove all the way down there. It took me an hour to get there. It's, I don't live close to anything. Hour to drive down there. I had to spray one tree, and, I came home a different way. So it's 45 minutes on the way home. And while I'm there, she did say thanks and everything, but instead of offering me some gas money for coming down there, and, I just did them a favor. There was no charge or anything for this. It just cost me money to go do this. She wanted me to spray all of the other trees that were there too. Well, since you're here, can't you just spray all of them? And I said, no. I said, first of all, I've already sprayed them, and it cost me money. I'm spraying this tree because it hasn't been treated. I was just here a week and a half ago spraying these. I'm not spraying them again. Like, goddamn, you do something to help somebody out, and instead of them saying, oh, thanks, that's awesome, here's something for helping me out, they just want more. It's almost like they see that you're a nice guy and say, hey, this guy's a nice guy. I can probably get some free shit out of him if I just ask. And so it's just inspires me to not be generous, because people immediately want to just take advantage of you. So I sprayed one tree, and then I turned out, so 2 hours out of my day today just to go spray a tree. And I'm going to be back at that property in 2 weeks. So that was my entire day today. I was driving over there and getting that taken care of. Thank you, Detritus. Mike. All right, it is not even 9 o'clock yet, and we're already sitting down. I feel like I'm already running out of stuff to talk about. The only thing I really had on my mind, fish keeping wise, tonight was the theme I kind of started with. I know a lot of you weren't here in the very beginning, but I had talked about the fish that I had moved, and I didn't want to just move it back, and I was going to just wait and watch and all that. And that got me thinking about the theme in the aquarium hobby of nothing good ever happens fast. And you have to learn patience, and you have to learn not to just react to things. You should respond to them. And before you respond, you observe and you take in some information and you wait and see. Now, there are some situations that are emergency situations. If you see your fish acting funny and you check and find out you've got ammonia in the tank, then yes, you need to leap into action and do a water change and, all that kind of stuff. As far as finding out whether these two fish are going to get along, I just put the fish in there today and look, they're all fighting. You can't go by that, I've heard countless people over the years talk about how, the fish in the fish store, they weren't acting like this in the fish store tank. And then I bring it home and it's acting completely differently. Well, yeah, like you can't expect a 7-gallon box with 15 fish in it to behave like it's going to behave when you bring it home and put it in your aquarium. The thing to do, though, is to give it a week, unless there's like serious aggression or a fish is in danger of being injured or something like that. Obviously, in those circumstances, you need to intervene. But otherwise, just be patient. Just give it a little time, watch, wait, let everybody adjust to the new circumstances and see what happens. If it continues to be a problem, then you can begin, addressing it or whatever. But to just see a fish doing something once and then say, I need to change that, or I need to do something about that. In most circumstances, you don't. Again, there are some, where there's aggression and whatnot. But for the most part, aquarium hobby is a waiting game. It's a patience game. Whether we're waiting for the cycle to fully develop or we're, waiting for fish to grow in, everybody wants that nice, big, beautiful fish. But when you buy them and they're that small, you want them to hurry up and get big and pretty. And you just can't. You can't hurry them. They're going to grow at the rate they grow. And, you buy a baby fish like my cichlid down there is starting to look amazing now. It's 2 years old. So, yeah, it's, or it's almost 2 years old now. It takes that much time for them to really start getting into their adult colors and whatnot. You just can't rush things in the aquarium hobby. You just have to learn patience. So that was the only real fish related theme I had on my mind tonight. All right, I'm going to cough. I can already forewarn you. This is that outdoor grown, uncured stuff. It's really harsh. It gets the job done, but it's not pleasant. Well, again, the fish act differently in the fish store. The same reason you act differently when you're in a restaurant than you do when you're home, or when you're in a crowd. Like that's not a normal situation. When fish are in an aquarium at a fish store, they probably just got there. They don't tend to spend a lot of time in these tanks. So not only did they just get there, they're crammed in a very small tank, bright lights on them, people walking. It's a very stressful environment. Those fish aren't worried about establishing territory and habitats. They're not worried about pairing off and mating and all that kind of stuff. It's like being in jail. A bunch of people all in a prison cell are going to act differently than they act when they're home. And so it's nothing more complicated than that. When you bring them home from the little blocks they're being kept in and you put them in an environment like this, they're going to start acting more like a natural fish. And that natural fish might be territorial or aggressive or whatever, whereas you wouldn't have seen that kind of behavior in the fish store. You're going to start seeing that kind of behavior in your tank at home. And that's usually the argument that I get, or the complaint that I hear, is they seem so calm and peaceful in the fish tank. They weren't fighting with anybody, but I brought them home and suddenly they're fighting with these other fish. Another thing to consider is, generally speaking, fish stores will keep certain kinds of fish together. So even though you might have 2 or 3 different types of fish in one little square box of water, it's types of fish that can be in that box together. When you buy one of those and bring it home and put it in your tank that has other fish in it, some of those fish may not be okay to be kept with that fish that's in the store. I've been in fish stores where they've had to move fish because it says on their sheet that these 3 fish are supposed to go together, but clearly somebody made a mistake because this one's aggressive towards that one and they can't stay together. And so they have to rearrange their tanks and all that. So they maximize the amount of fish they can keep. Again, it's shelf space to them. It's not their pets. It's not their aquariums. It's shelf space. And so they stack as many items on the shelf as they can in as small a space as they can. And so you'll have 3 or 4 different kind of fish in a very small tank. You bring some of them home and mix them with different fish, and now suddenly you're seeing different, experiences or whatever. Hey, Rosie. All right, let me see where I was. Are you saying our pump's a big deal? I don't know what kind of pump you're going to be using. If you're on a well, then you should have a well pump that pumps the water into what is usually referred to as an X-Troll tank. I'll show you. Say hello to Uma, everybody. So the water will get pumped in from your well, and it'll get pumped in a big tank like this. And the way this works is there's a bladder, a rubber bladder in the middle of that tank. And so as the water starts coming in from the bottom, the air in there pushes that bladder up and it pressurizes the top part. And so when you use your domestic water, when you take a shower or something, it's that pressure in there pushing down on that bladder that gives you your household water pressure. When it gets, in my case, when it gets down to 30 psi, the well pump outside on and starts pumping more water back in here, and it pumps it up until the pressure hits 60 psi, and then it shuts off. And then slowly my water pressure goes down and down and down. And when it gets down to 30, the pump kicks on and I can feel the water pressure going back up. So my showers, or if I'm watering the lawn, like the hose will get, closer and closer and closer as the water pressure gets lower and lower. And then all of a sudden I can see the hose getting further and further away as the pressure comes back up. So you should have a system something like that. So where you would put the pump, I don't really know. RODI systems, I don't know. That's kind of a lot of investment to put into a rental property. I mean, I guess if you got all the fish and you really need it and everything, it might be worth it. But if you've got low water pressure coming out of your faucet, and then you try to put a pump on that to increase the water pressure on the outside, you could increase the pressure, but the volume would go way down. You can't just take that water and accelerate it and have it come out at the same rate on the other end, but just at a higher pressure, because if it's going out that fast, it also has to be coming in that fast. And if you've got a low amount of water pressure feeding the system, you can have a big amount of water coming in at low pressure and then squirting out at high pressure through a smaller nozzle or something like that. But again, I'm not really sure how you would work the system. My RO system is just connected to my regular water system. So it has my normal household pressure operating it. Again, I'd have to see the system you're talking about, and I'm not a water systems guy anyway. You're probably better off actually talking to the water system people than you are asking me. But I'm not really sure exactly what you're talking about with the pump and all. Let's see. All right. Well, dwarf gouramis are mildly aggressive. Anybody that says they're not doesn't have any experience with dwarf gouramis. And guppies are fin nippers, so you don't really want to mix gouramis and guppies together anyway. And so the gourami may very well have been going after the guppies in defense of the guppies nipping at the gourami's fins. All right. Again, it depends on what other fish you mix them with. Yeah, I'm not sure what to tell you there, Rosie, on that. I wouldn't think it would need an additional pump. I mean, unless you've got ridiculously low, like you turn your sink on and water just trickles out of it or something, you should be able to just set up an RO system. My system, when I've got it running on full, it goes drip, 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 drip. I get like 5 or 6 gallons a day out of it. It's not a lot of water coming through the system. And remember, for every gallon of RO water you get, at least 4 gallons is going down the drain wasted. So if you're paying for your water, for every gallon of RO water, you're going to be paying for 5 or 6 gallons of water for every gallon of RO water. It's a very wasteful process. If you're living where I live and you just pump water out of the ground and it's, well, you already said you have a well pump. But just keep that in mind. If you have a well that runs dry pretty easily and you got to be limited on how much water you use, I don't. I can just run water constantly. But some people have wells that you got to limit how much water and then wait, let the well fill back up. And so if you're in that kind of situation, remember that making RO water, you waste a lot of water in the process of getting that RO finished product. Vonk, how are you doing this evening? Well, again, if you've got an X-Troll tank, and I'm assuming you do, I'm assuming most well systems work the same way. It's how you get your pressure in the house. Look at where your well pump comes in. You should have some kind of water system there. And if nothing else, a lot of what you saw in that corner on mine is my softening and neutralizing and my BioLite. I got a whole system over there. But at the very least, you got to have that X-Troll tank because that's where your domestic water pressure comes from. And the way those X-Troll tanks work is they have a cutoff at the top and a cut on at the bottom. And there should be a gauge on it. You should be able to see how much pressure is actually in the tank. And as the water fills it up, it will build pressure and build pressure. And when it gets to whatever you've got to set the cutoff at, mine is 60. When it gets to 60 PSI, the well pump shuts off. It stops pumping water into the tank. And then as I use the water and that pressure comes down, when it gets to 30 PSI, it kicks back on and starts pumping water back in. So my water pressure is anywhere between 30 PSI and 60 PSI, depending on how much water is currently in my X-Troll tank. You should have a similar system. So if you measured it at 40 PSI, mine goes down to 30 PSI before it even kicks on. So now I don't, when I turn my kitchen sink on, I don't have water blasting out of it or anything. But we take showers and, we got water pressure in the house. We always have. We've never gone beyond what we have now, and it's always served us just fine. All right. Oh, that's the worst kind, Art. Yeah, Rosie, that's exactly what you're talking about. It's the it should say X-Troll. I know X-Troll is a brand, but it's kind of like Thermos. Like everybody uses that brand, and so that big blue tank should have a big X, right on the front of it, and between probably 30 and 60 psi. I don't know how you'd check to see where the cut on and cut off is, but if you're sitting at 50 and you were at 40 before, you're probably still operating within that 30 to 60 sort of window. And I run my RO system off of that. So I have my RO system set up. If you see that little blue line up there, that comes all the way down and goes into this tank. And I have a float valve in there, so when it fills up, it shuts off. But when this is on and filling this tank, it literally just says drip, 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 dribble, dribble, drip, drip, dribble, drip. That's all that comes out of there. And if we follow that blue line all the way back here, that is my RO system. And I don't have an RODI, but I do. It's a 4-stage RO system. And again, you can see it's just a line that's cut into my regular household water. So there's no special extra pressure or anything like that. It just goes from there up. It goes into this end. It goes through all 4 of the filters, and then it comes out this end and goes around and goes on down into my reservoir. I don't use it for anything anymore. I used to use it when I had brackish water, and I used to use it when I was afraid of nitrate. So that's actually 65 gallons of water sitting there right now. It's been there for years because I just don't really use it for anything now. But I do have 65 gallons of RO water. I suppose if we ever got into a water emergency of a power outage or something in the freezing winter, I could always, use that water. I'd still boil it. It's been sitting there for so long now, I wouldn't dare just drink it straight out of the container. But I do have 65 gallons of water sitting there. All right, let's see if I can get this joint lit again. Can't really see it in the disco light. Told you, this shit's rough. Yes, this is legal. I can also... Where's my phone? I think I set my phone down. I showed this to everybody once, but I'll show it again because I'm proud of this. For new people, I've spent a long time struggling with my weed. I was fighting bugs and so on and so forth. And I finally got on top of them. And I've been telling everybody forever that, like, when I grow it right, I can really grow some dank bud. And I'm finally getting it right. So that is a super silver haze. And if you actually zoom in on that a little, you can see what I'm talking about how amazing that looks. And this still has a couple of weeks to go before it's even done. So that's my super silver haze. And then this one has quite a ways left to go. And that is a Tropicana cookies. This one's not as impressive. If you really zoom in, you can't see all the trichomes and stuff on it quite as much. And it's a much looser sort of bud. It's growing very different, but it's also really skinny right now. It hasn't even begun to get to, if you grow weed, you'll know, like in the last couple of weeks of bud development, they just really pack on weight and the fragrance all comes in. Like the magic happens in the last 2 weeks. The second one you saw, that real tall, skinny one, that hasn't got to that, like, putting on weight part of its life cycle yet. So that should be the size of a soda can by the time it's done. And it's going to be a bud about 12 or 14 inches long. And again, about the diameter of a soda can. So I'm excited about both those plants. But yes, I can legally grow my own weed, and obviously I can smoke it. The only thing I'm not allowed to do is sell it. I can give it away, but I can't sell it to anybody. Does weed calm me down? Pretty much, yeah. The last time I did a TDS check on my RO system, I had like 11 or 13 parts per million. An RO system will not reduce your TDS down to 0. That's what you need, the RODI. The DI stands for a deionizer. And an RO system alone, like I have, will reduce your TDI by 90 to 95%. And when I do a raw water TDI and then I do the output on my RO, it's about a 95% reduction in TDS. So I know my filters are still working. Everything's good. I use that so little. I've never replaced those filters. They've been on there for a decade and I've never replaced the filters. And every time I've ever checked the RO water, again, not that I use it, but I always come out at like 11 or 12, maybe 13 parts per million, which again is about a 95% reduction in what my groundwater has. And that's about where it should be. If you really want to get it down to 0, you need to get the RODI. I'm not worried about those 13 parts per million that are still left over. If you've got really hard water or you've got a lot of stuff, remember, if you're doing a 90% reduction, and you're starting at 900 parts per million, you're still going to have 100 parts per million in your output of an RO system. So if you had water that was that high, then maybe the RODI might make sense, and you could actually get that last 100 out of there or get it down to very close to zero. I think 11 is very close to zero. 11 parts per million is basically pure water as far as I'm concerned. And so I never bothered with the DI part of it. I've got really low. I've got like 225 parts per million in my groundwater. It's nothing. I've got really pure water in my ground, and so I don't have to worry about it. I don't have a lot of minerals or anything in it. So I did that. What I do have in my groundwater is nitrate, because I live in a fairly farming community. So I got the RO system back in my early days when nitrate was the big killer, and like every other video that was on YouTube was about how the nitrates are killing your fish. And again, I am where I am today on my stance on nitrates because of all the panic and worry and years of stress. And I got a water system installed, and, all in the attempt to find out, how to get rid of my nitrate, only to eventually realize, like, no, my fish seem okay. Like, they're not dying the way everybody keeps saying they're supposed to die. And that's when I began my journey into like researching and studying about nitrate and stuff like that. But that's how long ago I had all that shit installed. It was like way back in the beginning, even before my YouTube days. I was trying to get rid of my nitrate. And that's the only reason I put in that RO system, was because of nitrate. I wish I'd have known what I know now. I could have saved the money, because I don't use it for anything, and I'm not worried about the nitrate. So, all right. Yeah, you might be able to do that, Rosie. Just connect it right up. Yeah, I started growing my own about 20 years ago. Yeah, more or less like 2006, 2007, something like that is when I started growing. Probably 2006. So yeah, it's probably been almost 20 years that I've been growing myself now. Oh, Rosie, I didn't know you were a neighbor. Did, did you mention you moved to Maryland? I think you did, now that I'm thinking about it. Yeah, because I remember saying I didn't know where Lexington Park is. You're way down in southern Maryland, aren't you? I do smoke out of a bong occasionally. Yeah, exactly. 11 parts per million is, I'm perfectly okay with that. I'm not worried about those last 11 parts per million. This is my wannabe TARDIS. I saw it one day and I just had to buy it. I always meant to paint it blue, but I never got around to it, and so it's my red TARDIS. But yes, this is my TARDIS. You haven't heard me talk about Doctor Who like every other sentence and every other live stream. I'm always talking about Doctor Who. I'm proudly a Doctor Who nerd, but I'm an old school Doctor Who nerd. I don't truck with all that new stuff. I don't complain about the new stuff. I'm not one of those people that, oh, back in my day, they knew how to make it. Oh, this shit sucks. It's weird reading the comments under it. Like, how many people are just angry at the new Doctor Who because it's not what they had when they were a child? Like, fucking get a grip, dude. It's a television show. If you don't like it, just don't watch it. But people get really fucking angry about the new version and all that. I watched the new stuff for the first 5 years or so, and I just kind of lost interest with where they were going with the story and everything. But I watched classic, old school Doctor Who from the 60s to the 90s all the fucking time. No, I've never had an old fashioned. I don't drink anymore. I did for many years, and it damn near killed me twice. So fortunately, I did survive, and I no longer smoke. I mean, I no longer drink or smoke cigarettes. I did, however, after 13 years without a cigarette, I decided to go back to vaping on nicotine. So far, I'm not regretting it. Not only do I enjoy it, the feeling of it as a drug, but I've lost 10 pounds since I've been doing it. And I smoke about a tenth of the amount of weed I used to smoke since I've been hitting on nicotine again. This is literally the second time today I've smoked weed. And the first time I smoked weed today, I had like that much of a joint left from last night. And that's what I smoked this afternoon. And then this is it. I used to smoke 3 times that much on a single live stream. I would go through, an eighth of weed in a live stream doing bong hits and stuff. I don't smoke that much weed in a week now since I've been hitting on the nicotine again. So my wife, she told me the other day, she's no problem with me doing the nicotine. As little weed as I've been smoking, I'm not stinking the house up anymore. She's fine with the smell of vanilla, or whatever I'm puffing on, cotton candy or something, versus me smoking weed in the basement. It just stinks up the house. So even my wife is happy that I'm doing the nicotine again. So, but those are the only drugs I do. Those and of course mushrooms. Speaking of which, shouldn't my candy bar be kicking in here pretty soon? It might be starting. We'll see. For those of you who missed it, about an hour ago, I ate the last bit of my mushroom chocolate bar. When you said a highball, I thought you meant like an actual highball. A highball is some kind of whiskey drink. I don't know if it's like it's not. It's like an old-fashioned kind of whiskey drink. It's very simple, very uncomplicated. It's not like a new fancy fruity kind of drink. But that's what I thought you meant when you said a highball. Let me find out. Computer, what are the ingredients in a highball?
To make 1 serving of bourbon highball, you'll need 2.0 fluid ounces Angel's Envy bourbon, 5.0 fluid ounces soda water, 1.0 lemon and ice to taste. Those are all the ingredients.
So it's basically soda water with whiskey in it is a highball, and then you put some ice and lemon in it. I don't smoke alcohol, but I do drink the cigarettes. No, I've never tried the nicotine pouches. I do have nicotine gum, and that's what I started with before I started vaping it again. When I started growing my own mushrooms and I started eating the mushrooms on a regular basis, the urge for nicotine, I didn't want to smoke a cigarette. Like I didn't have any desire for an actual cigarette. I just wanted nicotine because I have taken puffs here and there off of vape pens and stuff. So I know what that nicotine feels like. And I just kept craving nicotine. And after about a week of that, I was like, fuck, I need to get some gum or something just to stop me from craving it. And the gum helped, but I still just really wanted nicotine. And one day I just said, screw it. I'm tired of fucking, desiring this stuff and denying it. Nicotine's not that big a deal to me. I'm not that worried about it. It's cigarettes I don't want to smoke again, but the vaping nicotine's no big deal. So I bought some nicotine in a pod and never looked back. Again, I lost 10 pounds within the first about week and a half to 2 weeks. I dropped about anywhere from 9 to 10 pounds. So I'm happy with that. And I've stayed there. I'm still down at like 184. It is all Steve's fault. Didn't want to throw you under the bus there, Steve. But Steve is the one that when I would hang out, now, he's not the only one. I have tried like a Juul pod years ago from a friend of mine. I took a puff off of that. But basically, whenever Steve and I hang out, throughout the day, I'll take a puff off of his nicotine or whatever. And at that point, it was still getting me like a real big buzz when I took it. Now I just puff away, and I don't feel high off of it. I'm to the point where I'm just puffing on it now, and it's just I do feel better when I puff on it, but I don't get that buzzy, spaced out kind of feeling anymore. But yeah, it was basically Steve that was letting me smoke on his nicotine that made me like I want that again, and so now I'm doing it. But again, I'm not unhappy about it. I've lost 10 pounds. I'm not smoking a bunch of weed. And I'm good. I'm happy. Is it good for my lungs? No. Oh, the ankle weight could have been. Um, there's always a lot of discussion and argument about the whole vaping thing and whatnot, and people just approach it differently. Like everybody approaches life as though everything's a binary choice. It's either this way or it's that way. There's no subtlety in anything anymore. There's no nuance to anything. So the reality is, while I'm not going to say vaping is good for you, when compared to smoking cigarettes, it's not nearly as bad for you as smoking cigarettes. Um, Again, that doesn't mean it's good for you. I don't think I'm doing like a health food regime when I'm puffing on nicotine. But it's not smoking cigarettes. Smoking cigarettes is absolutely terrible for you. Um, it's horrible. I smoked for 30 years, and I can tell you, vaping ain't fucking in the same ballpark. It's not even the parking lot of the same ballpark as smoking cigarettes, as far as feeling sick and not having energy and coughing up black shit every morning and never having, getting winded walking up the steps, and like just cigarettes just fucking are horrible. They're just poison. Um, Nicotine is a mild stimulant, very similar to caffeine. If you're okay drinking caffeine, then nicotine itself is not that bad. Um, and that's what's in a vape stuff. It's just nicotine. Now, I know you are vaping the other stuff, but that's just vegetable glycerin and propylene glycol, which have fairly known benign effects. All the Hollywood smoke effects you see, that's propylene glycol. That's all that is. That fake smoke effect you get in the Hollywood movies or whatever that comes out of those fog machines, that's propylene glycol. It's basically vape juice that they're making that smoke with. And so vape juice and nicotine is all I'm inhaling, and so I'm not too concerned about it. Rosie, thank you. Oh, you're quite welcome. I'm glad to help anytime I can. Corn dog. All right. No, I've never tried the Zen pouches or whatever. Well, fortunately, I don't have either shingles or ingrown toenails, so there you go. I've been vaping for weeks, and I don't have either of those things. So not only is it curative, it's also apparently preventative. I got 30 people watching. Wow, it's a big night. Ooh, look at this. That is a dark red shrimp. So not only am I proving that I do still have shrimp in this tank, but I've even got a really good looking one. I have seen other ones that are usually down here in the bushes, and I see those like pale orange ones and some of the more yellowy looking ones. That's the first time I've seen a really dark red one in that tank. The ones I'm most in love with are the ones that came out like cobalt blue with a yellow stripe down their back. It's almost like the shrimp have like all the cool shrimp you can buy, like all the genes are in every single one of them, and it's just a matter of breeding, and eventually you're going to get a variety pack, because I've got yellow ones, red ones, orange ones, clear ones, and now I have blue ones with yellow stripes down the back of them. All right, that mushroom candy bar is definitely starting to kick in. Have yours started breeding yet, Steve? Because I didn't get any blue ones either. When Art first sent me them, it was maybe 15 of them or something in a bag, and they were all either sort of clearish pale color or I can't remember what he said they were called. If you're still watching, Art, you can tell us. But it was something like a creamsicle or something like that. It had that sort of pale orange kind of color to it. And that's what I started with. And out of them, as they've bred, I've had clear ones, I've had dark red ones, I've had yellow ones, I've now got the blue with the fucking yellow stripe down their back. It's awesome. I love those shrimp. I'm really happy with them. Again, I thank you again, Art. I got a lot of them in my office tank. And when I was doing some maintenance in my wife's tank upstairs the other day, I saw some in there. So I did put some in there once upon a time, and at least a few of them are still alive. There's an angelfish in that tank, though. So an angelfish is pretty aggressive towards eating shrimp. Sun-kissed. I don't know why I keep saying creamsicle. I knew it was some kind of food that was an orangey kind of color. All right, Dave, thanks for hanging out. Yeah, I can't wait till I get my weed dried and cured. This stuff is rough. Yeah, I got to take a break from that. God damn. I'm also going to show you a new thing I got. I have ceiling fans in most of my rooms upstairs, but ceiling fans are really expensive, and I didn't want to install one in my office. But when the space heater, all the heat goes up and just hangs around the ceiling, and so you put a little ceiling fan on, it moves the air around the room, and it really warms the place up. So I actually looked online, and you can get these little USB powered fans. This one doesn't always kick in. You got to give it a little bump to get it going. But like $22 on Amazon, it plugs in if you've got like a battery bank or just plug it into a USB port. You can see how much air it's moving by how much the weed up there is blowing around. And the one I have up in my office has really sharp curved blades, and that makes like a breeze. It's almost too much wind blowing around the room. But I swear to God, when I'm sitting down here at night and I'm chilly and I'm looking at my thermometer, my temperature over there, if I turn that fan on, within 5 minutes, that temperature will come up 2.5 degrees. It just moves all of that warm air from the ceiling around the room. And it's awesome. I never thought I'd be able to get a functional ceiling fan for like $20. Of course, you can just hang it anywhere and take it down anytime you like. And because I can plug it into a power bank, I can take it out in the yard in the summertime and clip it underneath of my umbrella and just plug it in, and I'll have a breeze blowing on me in the summer. So if you didn't know those things exist, now you do, and you should get one. Let's see. Yeah, they should definitely survive if they're only in there with snails. Do Flo and Mr. Fabulous get along? Yeah. They don't hate each other, but they don't seem to be friends either. And the bigger that Mr. Fabulous gets, the more he seems to be sort of a little aggressive towards Flo. Now, when she's spawning, she's aggressive towards everybody else. So, they're both cichlids. But I don't really foresee there being much of an issue. They tend to stay at opposite ends of the tank. It's a 6-foot tank. They got plenty of room in there. Again, sometimes I'll see them hanging out near each other in the same group because they all school together. Remember, a shoal is all of the same fish swimming in the same direction, functioning like a unit. A school of fish is any group of fish that could be mixed species, and they're not necessarily functioning as a single. It's just a large group of fish that are all together. So those all do school together. I'll have, the angelfish will be sitting right in there with the silver dollars and both the jewel cichlid, and everybody just all gets into the school together. And I often see Mr. Fabulous and Flo near each other without any aggression. But during feeding time and stuff like that, they do get a little, standoffish. But I don't foresee any real issue with it. Give me a second there, Bunk. I'll give you a quick tour around the room and show you all of my tanks since you're new and you haven't seen anything. I'll show you my pond and whatnot. Well, Corn Dog, if you can do me a solid and go through my Amazon link on my Amazon Associates page, I'll get a couple of pennies out of the purchase. I don't have a link for it. I didn't really think about it. It was just spur of the moment. I looked in there and saw it, and I was like, oh, I got to tell her, because I'm stoked, dude. Seriously, it's amazing how much air that moves. It's quiet. And I think it was $22 or something like that. And it's fucking awesome. Yeah, I never thought about putting one in my truck. Whack, 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 whack right in the back of my head. But I got a back seat. I could hang the ceiling fan in the back seat. Oh, thank you, Ark. Well, you guys might be right. I don't know. I thought it was the other way around. And I will give you the quick tour. In fact, you've been looking at that tank. So while I'm looking this up real quick, you guys can look at the pond again. It's all murky now because of being after feeding time, and everybody got everything all stirred up. All right, I'm gonna put on my glasses for this one so I don't have to squint once I start reading. All right, oh god damn it, I'm on Yahoo again. Why does it keep defaulting me back to Yahoo? Hate Yahoo. It's a garbage fucking search engine. Makes agree. What the fuck is this? God, I hate Yahoo. All right, let me see what it says here on Wikipedia. In biology, any group of fish that stay together for social reasons are shoaling, and a group swimming in the same direction in a coordinated manner, they are schooling. So you guys are correct. I had it backwards. In common usage, in terms of sometimes rather loosely, about a quarter of the species shoal all of their lives, and about 1/2 shoal for part of their lives, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, you guys are right. I had that completely backwards. A shoal is the group, and the school is when they're all acting as a single unit. You guys got to watch me like a hawk. Don't fucking hesitate to call me out if you think I'm wrong. I often am. I was on the right track. It's the wrong train. All right, I'm just going to take a puff off my THC juice here for a minute. All right. So that's my koi pond. I got my terrarium. Dragon's tongue. I need to really trim this down a lot. In fact, we could probably do that. That'll give us something to do. We got all kind of stuff here. This is my inflow where the water comes in. This is my fancy goldfish tank. It's too small, but I don't have the ability to upgrade at the moment. It's not so small that it's, you know, problematic, but I would definitely like to see them in something larger, give them room to spread their legs a little bit and grow out. So those are my fancy goldfish. This is probably my least planted tank, simply because of the goldfish in there. They eat every damn thing. This is my little shrimp tank, and I've got a gajillion, zillion shrimp in there crawling all over everything like cockroaches. But this is actually fairly well planted. I got a big old piece of woodwork in there. I got the crypt in there. Of course, you can see the shrimp just moving around everywhere, like it's like a swarm of bees. Oh, look, I got a little piece of frog bit still in there, too. I didn't even know any of that had survived. So I got a great big ass rock in there, that big piece of wood, and then I got the crypt growing in there. So that's a lot going on for a little 5-gallon tank. My other 125 down here is not really heavily planted, but I do have this massive Anubias growing out of it. I always like to get behind it and look through the leaves. The leaves backlit are just fantastic looking. So you can see the edges of the leaves are getting all burned up and whatnot. Again, I've pointed out this is a low light plant, and it is sitting right underneath of a row of floodlights. So that's kind of a lot of light for an Anubias. But look at the size of that rhizome. I think it's massive. And we got a bunch of silver dollars in there. I've got a Geo pearl cichlid. I've got a jewel cichlid. I've got a rainbow shark. Got an angelfish. I got a couple of plecos, and I also have a spotted tilapia. So that's the jewel cichlid right there. I mean the pearl cichlid. And then that's my spotted tilapia back there in the corner. I got a little bit of pothos growing out of this end, and then of course I got the moss and stuff growing on all of the woodwork. And this piece of wood has fungus growing in it too, because this actually sprouts mushrooms occasionally. No, I've never eaten them. I have no idea what species of mushroom it is, but they're really fucking cool looking when I get the mushrooms sprouting on that. So I'm happy about that. This is my 40. I got that angelfish in there who is looking fat as hell. I'm beginning to wonder if that's not a female or maybe possibly running into some issues. But that's my angelfish. Otherwise, I've got a clown pleco in there somewhere. And believe it or not, I've got a bunch of live bears in there that are all just laying low. You can kind of see one down there swimming around. A lot of duckweed growing on the top. This is a filterless tank. I've got an air stone and a power head. I know it's got the spray bars and stuff in it, but the filter hasn't been connected in a year or more. And so it just functions as a filterless tank. It's actually looking pretty good. I got this weird stuff growing on the wood down there. I think it's pronounced Saswassertang or something like that. I had that in this tank once and I got rid of it. And now I've got that weird stuff growing again. And it's definitely not the Java moss. I wonder if this is a piece of it too. No, this is just Java moss here. Oh, it's Java moss attached to the roots of some Java fern. So we'll just throw that back in there. It'll find a home somewhere. It'll attach to something and start growing. If we move on, we got my 55 here. I have added this discus recently. And then, actually, let me get this pond light turned off to reduce that glare a little bit. This tank has a bunch of diamond tetras, a bunch of Buenos Aires tetras, the discus. I've got a red tail shark that hides. I've got a clown pleco that hides. And I've got a Synodontis lucipinus that hides. This log that you can see running the entire length of the tank is completely hollow, and it's got a bunch of outlets all throughout it. And so the fish just chill out in there all the time, and we seldom see them. Java moss, of course, you can see growing in there. And then the rest of that is basically the crypt. I got a little bit of Java fern. It's so small in the back, you can't even tell it's in there, but there actually is some Java fern in there. This is my other 55. And I've got a bunch of fish in this tank, a bunch of black skirt tetras, the angelfish, the discus. I've got a bunch of loaches, big striped Raphael catfish, pearl gouramis, and I think I've got a clown pleco in there. And most of the plants in here is the Java moss, Anubias, and then all this dark green stuff is all cyanobacteria. This tank's got a lot of cyanobacteria in it. And this is another type of Anubias that was supposed to be attached to this piece of wood, but keeps coming loose. And so I've given up on it, and I'm just letting it grow in the corner like that. But that's a different species of Anubias than this stuff. This is the species that I've got down there that grows massive over time. This is cuttings. All the other Anubias I have like that is from that. This is a different species, but still grows pretty big and fast. This is also an Anubias, but I've never cut this one, and it's still that small. And that's probably 8 years old, and I've never trimmed it. And then, of course, we got the Java fern in there. Got some Java fern growing up on a piece of wood back there. Not a lot of fish in here. I've got some striped bodia on the bottom, striated bodia. I've got that angelfish in the back. And I'm down to 2 tetras. I've got a red-blue Colombian and a black skirt tetra in there somewhere. At least I had a black skirt tetra in there somewhere. I don't see it now, so it might have died. This tank is kind of waiting to get replenished again. I'm down to, I think, 1, maybe 2 of the little tetra schooling fish, and when they're gone, I'll be able to like put something nice in there, you know, a full school of something specific. Maybe those Odessabarbs. Who knows? I'll have to look and see how big Odessabarbs get. I think they get bigger than they would be able to go in the 29, but we'll see. This is my other 40. Couple of discus and some minnows in here, a bunch of hair algae. Again, another piece of that huge Anubias. This came right out of that same tank down there. This tank's ready for a reset. I just haven't got to it yet. And then we come around to my 20, and I've got a dying betta fish in here, a bunch of Java moss. That's actually a little piece of Anubias that I've been growing for a very long time, and it's only that big, so that's got to be some kind of micro Anubias. I got a bunch of shrimp in this tank, a bunch of snails in this tank. All those white things you see are dead snail shells. And then I got some water sprite floating on the surface there. I know it's all raggedy looking, but that is actually water sprite. And then, of course, we got the duckweed and a kayak. That's just a tank full of shrimp down there, so not really much going on. So that's it. That's the whole tour of the fish room. I do have one other tank in my bathroom down here, but that's just got some wood and some Java and a bunch of shrimp in it. It's just kind of a grow out tank. I've got a 20 long in my office that's got a betta fish and a bunch of skirt tetras and a bunch of Java moss and Java fern and woodwork and stuff. And I have a tank set up in my wife's room that I call my wife's tank, even though all she does is feed it. I do all the maintenance and everything else on it. But that's a 20 gallon, and it's like a 20 standard or 20 tall, however you say that. And it's got an albino red-eye angelfish in it and some guppies and a few skirt tetras. And I believe I have a rubber lip pleco in that one. And then that's all my tanks. So I didn't count them. You'd think I'd just know. I get asked how many tanks I have often enough that I should just be able to give you the number. I think it's 16, but I have to count every time. So I'll just say 16, and we'll call it good at that. I don't know how. I mean, I guess I count those as tanks. Even the one in my bathroom in the other room, it's a tank that's got a filter. You know, it's a sponge filter and an air stone, but it's still a tank with a filter in it. It's got animals living in it. I have to feed it every day. I have a light that comes on and off. I count it as a tank. You know, it's not a display tank necessarily, but it's a tank I have to maintain and feed and whatnot. All right, let me get caught up on some comments here. Actually, I'm going to put this joint down and puff on some nicotine for a while. All right, Michael, good night. Sonny, how are you doing? Let me see where I was. All right. Let's see. Are you saying it's not that important about the difference between schooling and shoaling? I disagree. I think that's a very important distinction. And when I'm wrong, I want to know it because I don't want to keep saying it wrong. Now, I'm probably going to say it wrong again next time. So somebody will probably still have to correct me. I don't know why I have it in my head that the school is, maybe I'm thinking of like public school is like a mishmash of everybody. But it's a shoal that's a mishmash of everybody. And it's a school is the fucking on point single unit. Oh, don't get me started on indica versus sativa. Sonny, hello. All right. Do I breed them? I'm not sure what you're asking me if I breed, but not specifically. I do have some fish that do breed. My shrimp definitely multiply. I've got live bearers. Actually, I've got most of my live bearers separated out now that I don't have any females, so I don't really have a bunch of live bears being produced anymore. But my tetras breed in the 55, and so that's kind of like a self-sustaining tank. I never have to add fish to it; they just keep showing up. And I have some other fish that do lay eggs or whatever from time to time, but either don't have a male or in the case of the discus here, the other fish would eat the eggs. But I don't breed in the sense that I deliberately attempt to get fish to make babies for me. So whatever you're asking about, no, I don't do that with any of my fish. Yeah, plecos are pretty territorial. They find a place they like. If you've ever noticed my chocolate zebra pleco, it's always right around here. That's because his cave is underneath this rock. And you'll just always see him around here. It's the other one that lives down here that comes up to visit occasionally. So I don't know if this is the female and the male comes to visit or if they're just buddies. Or I don't know what's going on, but the one rarely leaves this area. It's the other one that always comes up to this end of the tank, and I'll see them sort of near each other, and then they're gone. And I've got a bunch of, oh, never mind. I see what it is. I had a bunch of weird looking marks on that rock. It looked like strange eggs, but what it actually is it used to be nearite snail eggs, which nearite snail eggs are like really hard and they don't come off of surfaces easily. But that's the rock that the pleco lives under, and it looks like the pleco has scraped them off. And what I'm seeing is like the little white circular outlines of where all the eggs used to be, and it's just this weird sort of pattern. With my old man eyes, I couldn't quite make out what I was seeing. I would love to have a full school of cardinal tetras. Oh, thank you, Mark. I'm glad you enjoyed it. One of my dream tanks has always been a really big tank, like at least a 125, maybe a 300, a really substantial tank. Have one massive centerpiece, like a really striking piece of woodwork with, really, dramatic rocks all around it and everything. Just one really big, massive piece right in the middle. And then have like 300 cardinals in there with it and just swimming around, nothing else. Just have a huge tank full of fucking a massive school of cardinals with one really big striking centerpiece in it. Don't don't know if I'll ever do that, but I've always wanted a tank like that. I got cardinal tetras a couple times real early on, and they didn't do well in my water. They never lived for very long for whatever reason. It might have been my skill as a fish keeper back then. I don't know. But they were expensive, and I could get neons back then. PetSmart used to twice a year would have neons on sale for 99 cents a piece, and I would just go in and clean them out. I'd bring home 40 or 50 neons at a time, and I'd put a bunch of them in all my tanks, and within 9 months or so they were gone, but within 9 months or so they were on sale for 99 cents again. And so when they went back to like neons, the last time I saw them they were like $3.50 a piece or something. I'm not paying $3.50 a piece for neons unless I know they're going to live for a long time. And I don't know. I'm actually thinking about putting a bunch of neons in my 55 with the diamond tetras and the Buenos Aires and all that sort of red, crypt in there. I think neons would just fucking pop in that tank. I think they'd look amazing. I just don't know when I'm going to spend money on fish again, but that is something I'd like to do, is put some neons in there. Not cardinals necessarily, but maybe. Oh, wow, it's 10 o'clock already. Yeah, that mushroom candy bar is definitely, as I was looking around the room, I just realized, like, why do I feel so funny? I forgot I ate that candy bar. For those of you that don't know about it, it is a mushroom chocolate, but it's not psilocybin. I still don't know exactly what's in this stuff. It's from a company called Treehouse. It's really good, and I really like it. It's a fantastic effect, but it's not psilocybin, and it doesn't really feel like psilocybin. It's something, different. But I ate 6 doses of it. I ate 6 squares. And yeah, I'm definitely feeling it now. So I'm going to start winding down here pretty soon, unless anybody's got anything more to talk about. I don't know what the Cardinals cost. The last time I looked at Cardinals was years and years ago. And if the neons I was getting were 99 cents a piece, the Cardinals were, $3.50 or $4 a piece. They were significantly more expensive. So I really haven't been in a fish store in so long that I honestly couldn't tell you what prices of anything is anymore. I can only assume they've probably gone up. I doubt they're cheaper than they were last time I was in a fish store, but I'm guessing Cardinals, are going to be $5 a pop or something like that. And again, if I, maybe if I could find them at the PetSmart where I've got a 30-day guarantee on them or something, then maybe. But I just can't see spending $50 on Cardinals when the last time I kept them, I don't think any of them lived more than maybe 6 months. So I don't know. We'll see. There's some disco lights for you. Woo! It's almost 4 a.m. there. It's 10 o'clock here. So I'm actually going to wind down and get out of here on time. I'll hang out for a few more minutes if anybody's got any last thoughts and whatnot, but I am going to start getting my stuff out of the room and packing up, so I don't have to do it after it's dark, because I'm going to shut all the lights down and we can have disco ball time for a few minutes. It is Friday night. I am on mushrooms, so we may as well have some kind of fun. I felt like that was a pretty dull live stream. All right, out in that light. We'll out in this light. Now it's party time. There you go. That's some good disco ball light. Oh, you're welcome, Bonk. Thanks for stopping by and hanging out. And if you really enjoyed it and you'd like a private members only live stream, not private for you, but private for members, you can join channel membership for $2.99 a month. That'll not only get you the Wednesday members live stream, but will also get you access to my Discord server and the whole access to the community over there. We got all kind of stuff, etc. So if you're interested in that, it's $2.99 a month for a channel membership. Otherwise, of course, I do the live streams every Friday night and Sunday night at 8 Eastern time. Oh, that sounds like fun, Bob. If I was more adventurous with food, that would sound awesome. It does sound awesome. I just know it's not anything I would particularly like, but I'm sure you're going to have a great time. All right, TK, thanks for stopping by. Yeah, so that'll be a good time. The only plans I have this weekend is probably leaf blowing. I plan on eating my last mushroom tomorrow night. That's going to be my Saturday night. And I don't know of anything else I have to do other than like some winterizing in the garden. We've got some elephant ears we need to get dug up and some bulbs we need to get in the ground before the ground starts freezing and that kind of thing. But that's it. That's my big wild plans for the weekend, digging up bulbs and planting bulbs and eating mushrooms. Woohoo! Living the dream. Actually, if you'd asked me when I was a teenager, like, what would your dream life be? I'm fucking living it. Man, every now and again, that shit just comes out sideways. All right, everybody, on that note, I am going to say good night. Thanks for hanging out. I hope you had a good time. And I will see you again on Sunday night. And remember, if you want to get a members Wednesday only, or Wednesdays members only, it's $2.99 a month for membership. So thanks, everybody. Have a good night, and I will see you on Sunday. Good night.